Hi VC, Midge here, and this is a response video. In fact, it's my first response video to a challenge on the VC, and it's from the Static Traveller, and it was centered around this book, 1001 Albums You Must Listen to Before You Die. And his point was that with list books such as these, it's always the same artists, it's always the same albums, and the challenge was to come up with 5 albums from your own collection that you think should be included in a book such as this, or must have albums that people need to hear. And I thought it was a great idea for a video, and I thought about it a lot, to be honest. I've certainly got more than 5 I could recommend, but I've kept it to 5. And I'm going to talk you through them in a minute. But basically, I think books like this do have the place. They're great for when you're starting out on the collections and building a music collection. It's always good to have recommendations and things like that. It is a good read, this book, actually. I've forgotten how good it was. The only thing that lets it down slightly is the 90s and 2000s sections of it. There's some iffy choices. I don't think they really stand up today, to be honest. It's classic albums. I think they need to be given a bit more time, to be honest. But like I said, the great books for when you're starting a collection. When I was a teenager, my go-to reference book was Colin Larkin's all-time top 1000 albums. As you can see, it's a well-read, well-worn copy. It's a bit dated now, to be honest with you, but it was great from, when I was starting to get into music and LPs and stuff, and recommendations and things like that. So they do have the place, and it's great to have somewhere as a starter guide for when you're just starting to build a music collection. The good thing about the Static Traveller's challenge is that most of the great recommendations you get are from other collectors. They're not from the music press or magazines. They are from other collectors. So those books are great for starting out and being on the dual carriageway, if you like. But it's always great to go off on different crossroads and side roads, and they're often the best recommendations are from other collectors. So hopefully you'll get something out of my 5. So basically, let's set the scene. You're in hospital. You're hooked up to life support. There's doctors and nurses surrounding your bed. Your heart monitor's making that very disturbing sound. Then all of a sudden, I come tearing down the corridor into your ward, throw your curtains wide, grab you, slap you around the chops a bit, and say, before you go anywhere, sunshine, you need to listen to these 5 albums. And these are the 5 albums I would present to you before you snuffed it. So first of all, we've got the 24 Carat Black, Ghetto, Misfortune's Wealth. This was issued on the Stax label in 1973. And it's unusual for a soul album in terms of that it's a concept album, and you don't tend to get many of those in soul circles. It's built around a composer and arranger called Dale Warren, and it's like a studio band that he built up around him. So it was never a touring act. It was never more than a 1 album project. Male and female vocalists, top drawer musicians play on this, but it is very much based in the studio. And obviously, as its title suggests, it's a concept album about the hardships endured by Black Americans in the ghettos in the 70s. And as such, every single track is based around an aspect of poverty. So it could be hunger, rent, jobs, anything that contributes to the ghetto's poverty and to the people who are struggling in it. So it's quite a heavy album in some ways in terms of the message, but the music is great. It's so well produced and arranged. The musicians are fantastic. There's a different sort of balance of male and female vocals. It's soul-y, it's funky, it's quite sermony in parts, and it's one of those albums that's come to prominence again because it's been sampled quite heavily by hip-hop artists over the years, which is why it's still in print. It's fairly easy to get a copy of it, a new copy of it. It's still in print, I think. It's got some great instrumentals on it. It's probably the most famous track on it is the 24 Carat Black theme, which is this about a 7-minute instrumental. It's brilliant. It builds over a repetitive guitar motif, and it just slowly builds and builds and builds and gets faster. And it's a great album. There's elements of soul, elements of funk, and a heavy message, and quite educational, quite interesting. And it's one of those albums that I think should be more well known. I don't really see a lot of people talking about this album over the years, but it's superb. Really is superb. The next album I'm going to talk about is from 1970, and it's Pete Brown and Piblokto's Thousands on a Raft. It was originally issued on the progressive label Harvest in the 70s. That's Pete Brown there. Normal looking guy. I'm sure you'll agree. And Pete Brown was the lyricist for Cream, and that's how I first became aware of him. And these lyrics on some of the Cream songs are just superb. They give it those psychedelic images that She Walks Like a Bearded Rainbow, I think, was one of his. And he was known as like a poet, really, and a lyricist. And his flights of fancy are great. His words are brilliantly surreal. He formed a band in the 70s, and to be honest with you, all of his albums on Harvest are worth getting. This is my favourite for reasons I'll come to in a minute. But basically, he formed his own band. There was a bit of there's a bit of a discussion about whether Pete Brown can actually sing. He can't, but his voice is really low and quite gruff, and it really suits the music. I wouldn't say it was particularly progressive, other than that some of the tracks are quite lengthy and they do sort of stretch out a bit. There's an instrumental jam on here called Highland Song, which goes on for 17 minutes. But it's progressive in tone, but I'm not sure it's actually a progressive rock album, if you see what I mean. It's more of a standard rock album with weird elements attached onto it. Its band included Jim Mullin, who became more famous as a jazz guitarist later on, and Rob Tate, who was a drummer who was in countless bands in the 70s. So there were really good musicians in the band. Obviously, this was originally issued on Harvest. I've always wanted an original copy of this, but they go for hundreds, and I'll never be able to afford an original copy. This is a reissue on Timeless, which was a label. I'm not sure if they were a label that officially reissued albums or not, but this is a good reissue, and it has also one of my all-time favourite album covers, which is this. And as you can see, the Titanic's sinking, I think it's Concorde sinking, and all the occupants of the crashed vehicles are escaping. They're all baked beans, and they're all on pieces of bread, drifting along the lake to try and get to safety. What a cover. What an amazing cover that is. Just superb. For some reason, the Timeless reissue has the front cover on the back and the back cover on the front. I don't know why. It's a gatefold, and on the inside, Pete Brown's lyrics are reproduced, which is good as well, but it's just a superb album. There's a song on here called Station Song Platform 2, which has a beautiful piano melody that runs through it. And it's quite subdued for a Pete Brown song, and really beautiful. But the rest of it is like heavy rock type jams, and with his surrealistic lyrics all over it. But it's a great album, so I would recommend that as well. Pete Brown, Thousands on a Raft. Next up, we're going to jump forward a bit to 2003 and a hip-hop trio, 2 MCs and 1 DJ, and this is Ugly Duckling's Taste the Secret. Ugly Duckling are a hip-hop trio. They're sort of old-school bass, really. They rap about things that a lot of other artists don't rap about. They are quite a funny band, but they are to be taken seriously. The DJ, Einstein, mined some great breaks. It is some amazing samples. Just when you think every great sample's been mined, Ugly Duckling seem to come out with a really catchy or upbeat or funky break. And this album is superb. It's based around a sort of an imagined fast food joint called the Meat Shake, and they only serve meat, so everything they sell has got meat in it. So it's like a concept album in a way with a story. A lot of skits on hip-hop albums get very tiring very quickly, and they're only really funny to the people who've made them, but this is an exception. The story based in this album is superb. Like I say, it's a fast food joint. They only serve meat, so there's some great skits where customers go in and they ask for a milkshake, but they only serve meat shakes, so you can only have chicken, steak, or pork. And then they ask, well, haven't you got anything traditional like vanilla? And they'll say, yeah, we've got vanilla ham, but we only serve it when it's Christmas. So there's some great skits, great sketches in here, and it's all built around the meat shakes rivalry with the Veggie Hut, which operates just around the corner. So you've got your meat eaters and you've got your veggies, and there's the great story about the battle between the two stores. And it's just a great concept album. It's funny, it's fresh, it's great samples, great upbeat songs, and you've got that sort of storyline of the two fast food joints against each other running through it. It's a superb hip hop album. Ugly Duckling are vastly underrated in my opinion. All their albums are worth checking out, but this is superb. If you're a fan of De La Soul's 3 Feet High and Rising, you need to hear this album because it's on the same wavelength. It's superb. I can't recommend it enough. And the concept even stretches to them dressing up as employees of Meat Shake on the liner notes. So you've got the two MCs, Dizzy Dustin and Andy Cooper, and the DJ Einstein. But it's a great concept album. There they are at the Meat Shake. And all the way through the albums, they've made their own jingles, they've made their own adverts for it. The concept works really well. It's really funny and it's a really great album. Can't recommend it enough. Ugly Duckling, Taste the Secret. Okay, next is a soundtrack from 1968, and I've recommended this to loads of people over the years, and everyone I've recommended it to seems to have fallen in love with it like I have. And it's Manfred Mann's Up the Junction. I have seen the film. It stars, as you can see, a young Dennis Waterman. I think it was like a kitchen sink drama. I don't remember that much about it, to be honest. But this soundtrack is absolutely superb. And it's a soundtrack of two halves. Half of it is instrumentals, obviously, but the jazz instrumentals, and don't let that put you off if you're not a jazz lover, because the sort of like swinging 60s type jazz instrumentals, sort of thing you'd expect to play in trendy nightclubs in the 60s. It really melodic, really upbeat, really sunshiny. So the instrumentals are absolutely superb. But what's so great about this album is the other half of it is some of the best pop psych you'll ever hear. The songs on here are absolutely superb, psychedelic, drifting, sunshiny, just awesome. You've got the actual title track, Up the Junction, Sing Songs of Love, Walking Around, and they're just sublime pop psych songs. So it's half a psychedelic album, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's just the songs are superb and the instrumentals are superb, and it's a great album. And I really think more people should know about this. It's not really mentioned that much, but it's amazing. If you're into psych, you'll love it. And on the back of it, the actual director of the film says these tunes will exist long after the picture has been forgotten. Well, the picture's more or less been forgotten, but the tunes shouldn't be, because it's a superb album. It really is superb. It's on the Fontana label from 68, and it's just an absolute beautiful psych soundtrack. Manfred Mann's Up the Junction. Okay, lastly, I was really surprised when the Static Traveller showed his last choice, which was a Basil Brush album. And I think it's great that people have these oddities in the collection that they think more people should hear and pull out. So, inspired by his choice, I've gone for a bit of a curveball as well, and I've gone for a comedy album. And I've gone for 1968 album by Marty Feldman, I Feel a Song Going Off. No lie, I love comedy albums. It's something that they should make more of these days, but they don't. They've gone out of fashion. But this is a superbly good album. I mean, back in the 60s when they made comedy albums, the same money and production values went into comedy albums as mainstream albums. So a lot of them are really high quality in terms of arrangements and things like that. They did put a lot of time and effort into them. This album has got about 25 tracks on it, and they're all they are really funny. It's a great comedy album. They are all songs, but don't let that put you off. It's not really sketches on this one. I've got a few other Marty Feldman albums, and they're mainly sketches, but these are all songs. They're written by Junction, who was a famous scriptwriter. He did appear with Marty Feldman on his show. He's been in A Hard Day's Night. He's been in loads of TV programs. He's worked with Piblokto. He's worked with lots of comedy stars, and he's written a lot of stuff, and the lyrics on here are superb. There's some great songs on here. There's about 25 songs on here, so obviously some of them are quite short, but you've got songs like, let me have a look, Cautious Love Song, which is a great song, and it's a song about, it involves all the tropes of being in love, like high temperatures and blue skies and soaring, but they're all brought down to earth, with Marty Feldman doing like a bit of a nerd's voice saying, well, I'm not really sure if my temperature's that high, I'm in love, or is it just a cold? And it's got a great melody to it, and it stands up as a song on its own, which a lot of the best comedy songs do. There's another great song on here called the 5 to 11 Waltz, which is sort of like imagines a pub turning out at last orders, and it's just really funny, and it's got some great imagery in it. But it's a great comedy album. It's really funny. It's got some great arrangements. If you like the Bonzo Dog Band, you'll love this album. You'll really like it. It's got a great cartoony cover, front and back, and it's just one of those albums that just curios that are really cool, and I really love it. And that's it. So that's my 5 albums I think you should hear before you die. So I hope you managed to make it and listen to these before you depart this mortal coil. And I hope you've enjoyed the video, and thanks to Static Traveller for such a great idea. Okay, see you next time.